यो वै ब्रह्मानं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तम्हदेव आत्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। So we saw yesterday, actually day before yesterday, we skipped one day in between, that how dhyana is taila dharavat, just like the viscous flow of oil. When it comes to dharana, he says, yam kinchit vishayam bahya bhi antaram anga anusandhasya chittaikagram dharana. When you can research, when you can go deeper into the sense experience, there are two aspects. One, when we can say, I am not interested in going out anymore. But if you are interested and you keep negating it, it's not going to work. So then the Rishi gives the second option. He says, okay, go deeper into whatever is attracting you. And this was the technique, the tool that the ancient rishis used. He said, if you're getting attracted to something, okay, go deep into it and then be free of it. Gurudev says very beautifully, either through knowledge you can be free or through experience you can be free. The Yoga Sutra says that this drishya, this world has two objectives, has two reasons for its existence. One is for bhoga, or to experience, and the second is apavarga, or to relinquish or to go beyond. In our experience, whenever we have indulged in something, after some time, the senses say, I'm done with it. Why? Gurudev says so beautifully that the capacity of the senses to enjoy is limited, but the desire is unlimited. We're all looking for an unlimited joy. And that is why sometimes the world seems not so interesting anymore. We've all had this experience sometime, sitting, watching a sunset, and asking yourself, what's the purpose of life? Why am I here? What is it, just to do it? All these things that I'm doing, there must be something more. Thank God it doesn't happen all the time. Otherwise, we would be good for nothing. At the same time, if it didn't happen, we would still be good for nothing. So thank God that there is mumukshatva, there is a quest to know, there is a wanting to know more. And having this is the greatest luck. So then the Rishi here says in the Yogasara Upanishad, Yam kinchit vishayam, whatever the object of the senses may be, anusandhasya, go deeper into it. And chittaikagram, hold your attention there. If something is attracting you, go deeper into it. And the body parts meditation that we do in the advanced course, in the silence program, uses this very principle to help us to go deeper in meditation. So then is it all about just focus? Should I just keep putting my attention and going outward all the time? So he says, no. Then the next sutra says, Taila dharavat anusandhanam nairantaryam dhyanam. Two things he says, Taila dharavat, just like the flow of viscous oil, starts off thick but settles down, relaxes, goes down. And yet it does not vanish. It does not become discrete like drops, but is a continuous flow. In the same way, when our attention is held somewhere, but then we relax the effort and yet it just continues, the awareness continues, then that is dhyana. Now, we have all experienced this so many times. Maybe initially it is, we need to put in some effort, but after that things become effortless. The first time I learned how to drive a car, it felt very effortful. But then after some time, it just became very effortless. So in our life also, now the car is something very mundane, but I want to put my attention on that which is uplifting. Yet my mind goes here and there. I hear some news story and it starts a train of thoughts in me. But if I'm able to hold the attention somewhere and then let it stay there without effort, then that is dhyana. So Gurudev says, when your mind is focused and when you relax in the state, let go, just be with the flow, then your meditation has begun to happen. So the starting point can be holding the attention, but letting go is the key for meditation. So then, okay, if I just have to let go, even when I sleep, I do let go. Even when I'm unconscious, sometimes in meditation, it seems as if I'm just doing nothing. There is a letting go of jadata, of inertia, and there is a letting go of awareness. So Gurudev says, when you doze off, when you sleep, when you're totally asleep, there is nothing that is continuing. There is a stop there. The awareness has stopped. On the other hand, when you let go, just an idea that is continuing somewhere deep inside you, that awareness stays, and that is meditation. Okay. But even in my meditation, sometimes I have no awareness of what is happening. So the next sutra says, Samadho dvividha, sampragnato asampragnata. So then he comes to samadhi. He says, okay, the samadhi is of two types, sampragnata and asampragnata. With awareness and without awareness. So you could have a calm, serene, focused mind, which is aware of everything, aware of infinity, or a mind that is not aware of anything. In a blissful state, you're completely forgetful of everything else. The awareness is there, yet the awareness is not outward, it's inward. So here, some pragyata and asampragyata are the awareness that in a meditative state, sometimes you're so aware of everything that is happening. And sometimes in a meditative state, the outside world has just dissolved for you. Both of them are samadhi. Yet there is prajna there. There is awareness there, just that the awareness is moving outward or inward. So Gurudev then goes on to describe the different types of samadhi. Dharma mega samadhi, where it's like a cloud of right. You know exactly what is right at what time. There is the sabija samadhi, where there is a seed. Like when you do your sahaj meditation, you take a seed, and then that takes you to samadhi. Or ritambhara pragya, or the knowledge of the truth. There also, when someone asks you a question, you know exactly what the answer is. You know whether this person in front of you is saying the truth or not. So all these different samadhis are bhava samadhi is there, where you're totally intoxicated. Maybe you're like Mirabai, or people who are in devotion, totally intoxicated and nothing else existed for them. Now Gurudev says very beautifully, gives an insight. He says, why so many different names are mentioned? Because at every state of consciousness, something unique is exhibited, something beautiful is exhibited. Though there are so many different types of samadhi, it can still be mainly classified as two. So you can have different experiences of samadhi. You can, something that is totally outward could also be samadhi. Walking in the rain could be samadhi. So samadhi is not just when you close the eyes that is samadhi. So and often this gives rise to comparisons. I look at other person and say, well, look at that person. He seems to be meditating so nicely. I am hopeless. I don't think this is for me. So this is why when we recognize that your samadhi can be awareness, can be with an outer awareness or without an outer awareness, then you stop craving for a certain experience in samadhi. So Gurudev says, if you are craving for a flashy experience, then that itself can be an impediment. Even the siddhis you get or the powers of the miracle can be an impediment to samadhi, because they can excite you, they can take you towards a craving or an aversion. And that's why very important to say, okay, I drop all this. It's not about the experience, but the experiencer. And when you recognize this, then you can really be in samadhi. So all of this he has already talked about: dharana, dhyana, samadhi, everything. Where is all this leading to? So what? Why should we even practice all this? Why should we get to the ultimate? So he says, the last sutra goes, Nistraigunyo yogi kaivalyam ashnute. When you're able to go beyond the three gunas, when you're able to transcend the three gunas, then kaivalyam ashnute. Then you become kevala means alone. So kaivalya literally means no two. There is a sense of oneness. Now, when I keep looking at the qualities, then I don't look at the substratum. Say, for example, if you have seen those photographs where if you look in one way, you can see one image, and if you look in another way, you can see the other image. There's a foreground and there's a background. Have you seen when you're looking with your eyes, and if you're focused on something that's close by, then you can't see what is behind. And same way, when you look at something that's far away, then whatever is close becomes out of focus. In the same way, here, when we are caught up in the three gunas, then we lose sight of that which is beyond the gunas, that which is beyond the qualities. If I look at a painting, then when I'm looking at the colors, then I don't see the canvas that's behind. But once I say, hey, like for example, for a jeweler, for a bullion merchant, for someone who deals in gold, say, hey, this is all gold. But for someone, they'll say, oh, this is in the form of a biscuit, this is in the form of this, whatever. So when we get caught up in the three gunas, which the mind goes outward through the senses, the intellect engages, and then he gives all the tools for us to get rid of it. And then he says, but all this, why are you doing all this? Nistraigunyu, kaivalya mashnate. You obtain kaivalya, you obtain that sense of oneness. It's pretty obvious. When, for example, the wood in the door, the wood in the table, and the wood in a toy, it's all wood. Yet when we start looking at the form, then we say, hey, these are all different. They are playing their different roles, of course. But if you look at it in a bigger sense, then you say, hey, it's all wood. It's all made up of the same thing. The same way, when I keep looking at the gunas, then at the qualities, then this whole world enchants me. Then I engage with the world. I'm not saying that it's not there. Yes, it is there. But there's another layer of reality that is deeper, or like Nina says, more ultimate. So, whatever we say, recognizing that the foreground and the background. Now, you'll say, is the background more important? Is the foreground of no use? No, no. Without the foreground, the background loses significance. Without the background, the foreground loses significance. But when you look at it from a wider perspective, then both of them have their place. It's like for the hero, the villain is someone to fight against. For the villain, the hero is someone to fight against. But for the director, both of them are part of the play, and both of them are necessary to bring out the joy of the play. So the whole idea is to move from being an actor to being the director, to take a step back to see from a wider perspective. Then Kaivalya Mashnate, that brings us such centeredness. Then you can have a say on what the actor is, the hero is doing, you have a say on what the villain is doing. Both of them come under your purview. In life also, the more we meditate, if you notice, the more we are centered, the more we are able to make a difference to this world. And if you notice, the more centered you are, more people come to you for decisions. They respect what you're saying. And often when there is a challenging situation, it might not always be the top guy who people come to for decisions. Maybe it's sometimes just someone else who people have faith in. So in that sense, when we are able to be established in the transcendent, when we are able to be when we practice this on a day-to-day basis, do our sadhana regularly, then you notice that that state stays on throughout the whole day. And when you're able to be established in it, kaivalya mashnate, that sense of kaivalya allows you to be effective in the world also. So don't think this is only for people who want to reject the world. Yet for each and every one of us who's in this world, who wants to make a difference, who wants to engage, the best way to do it is to look at the bigger picture. And once that is done, then you're able to have kaivalya, to have a sense of oneness, to be able to work with whatever we have. And that is something worth having. Yeah. So may this wonderful Yogasara Upanishad help us to get to that which we already are. If these few days of going through one of these most wonderful scripture, if it has allowed us to have an appreciation of what our sadhana actually does to us, if it gives us a sense of of perspective to see this whole world, to see what's happening, to see how our senses are engaging, to see how we are, and we're able to do this without a sense of rejection. We're able to see it with a sense of observation. Then the Yogasara Upanishad has gone a long way towards achieving its goal. So this is for me one of the most practical ways of seeing how a spiritual practice and being in the world can coexist. They don't have to be contradictory, they're actually complementary. And especially in times when it's challenging, when things seem to be going haywire, that's the time this really helps. When the seas are rough, that's when you need a strong anchor. When things are going haywire, when you're drowning, that's when you need a lifeguard. And may this Yogasara Upanishad be such a lifeguard, such a life jacket that can help us in these times that we are going through. So as usual, it's time for comments and your ideas, your questions. Go ahead.
Kashi ji.
Yes.
Hi. I can't see you though. You're not like, there's no picture on my thing. I can only hear your voice, but it's nice. I like it. So I was thinking.
So it seems I've transcended, gone beyond the thing.
I know, you've gone beyond my phone. You know, I was thinking about Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and I was thinking that is like the complete works, and that the Yogasara Upanishad is like the essence of those complete works. Would you say that's a good way to look at it?
Absolutely. At the same time, the way I look at it is that every work is complete in itself. And when, as long as it's like the directions, it doesn't matter where you, maybe some of the directions might be more elaborate, some might be more generic, but as long as it takes you to the goal, it's a direction worth having.
Okay.
Great. Next.
Shibaya, you said so beautifully that this is what is the most useful knowledge, is what is the most useful thing in times of dire situations. You know, this is the only thing which will see us through those dire situations.
So true.
So seeing that oneness, that which is behind, Gurudev, you know, he makes us catch it in a different way when he says each time that वो मछली को जैसे पानी surround करे हुए है, and the machli cannot realize that, you know, it is that water is all around the machli as well as inside the machli, and that she's made up of the same water. That is the Kaivalya to catch through these Upanishads. You know, that beautiful. Is, yes. I mean, I can't see beyond Vedanta. It is so beautiful. It is so beautiful.
So true, Amlaji. Manish, you're saying something.
Yeah, thank you, Kashi Bhaiya. I just wanted to understand if there's anything in this or any other sutra where you think it can help us deal with recurring patterns that may not work for you, right? So is there anything that helps deal with those patterns that, you know, maybe not work for you or whatever? So how does one deal with those recurring patterns? May not be related to this, but maybe there's some insight that you may want to share.
Sure. You know, I would say patience is the ultimate virtue on the spiritual path. Sometimes we are in such a hurry. I usually say there is no rush, only hurry. Hurry as in Lord Vishnu kind of hurry. So when we recognize that there is a very beautiful story. Once upon a time, long ago, far away, there was this person who went mountain climbing. He climbed up the mountain and he reached the peak Just as the sun was going to set, he watched the sunset from the top of the mountain and he loved it. He took pictures, did everything. And then he started coming down. And for anyone who's gone up a hill, coming down is probably more challenging than going up. So as he was coming down, the night fell and he was not able to see. And suddenly he slipped. And as he slipped, he started falling down the slope. He started grabbing, trying to see what could he hold on to, maybe this, maybe that. He held on to a branch, but it slipped and he continued. Finally, was able to hold on. And he held on to that branch for dear life. All night he was holding on to that branch. And when day broke, he realized he was 1 foot off the ground. So a lot of times, we just need to wait for the day to break and recognize that all these patterns that we felt were really bothering us, it's just the ground is just a foot away. Practically, how does this translate into our day-to-day experience? Recognizing that all these impressions, all of these patterns are nothing but impressions in the consciousness. I've experienced something, it has left its impression, and how do I get rid of it? That's where two things can help. One, of course, creating, removing all those impressions that are already there, and that is abhyasa. All the practices that we do, over a period of time, they tend to release all these impressions. The Sahaj Samadhi, the mantra, is a very powerful tool to help us release, get rid of all these impressions that form in so many layers of our consciousness. And the second thing is to make sure that we don't reinforce that impression with more impressions. A lot of times, maybe there is an impression, maybe there is a pattern, and every time I indulge in that pattern or continue doing the same thing again or try to resist that pattern, we actually end up reinforcing it. So Vairagya and Abhyasa, these are two tools that yoga gives us to help us move out of our patterns. And sometimes all it takes is that recognition that, hey, this is the right way to do it. A lot of times we're actually doing the right things, but we don't associate it with the objectives that we're looking for. Knowledge helps us to join the dots and see, hey, this is what I should be doing. And that gives us enthusiasm to continue doing that in a much more enthusiastic manner. Does that make sense, Manish?
Yes, absolutely. If you could just explain the second part a bit more, the Vairagya bit and how you related it to this particular.
So Vairagya is especially because, like, say, supposing the way you grow sugar crystals, you just have one little bit and then you put it in the sugar syrup and it keeps building on top of it. So maybe we have a seed of a pattern within us, but as we keep feeding it again and again and again, it just keeps getting reinforced and keeps getting bigger. Vairagya helps us to break this pattern of this cycle of reinforcement. And that allows, it's like, say, supposing you're practicing Abhyasa, you're doing all your practices, you're removing all the things that are filled in, but as we go through life, we continue to fill more things in. So essentially, 5 out, but 6 in will make things keep going bigger. So Vairagya really helps us to preserve ourselves from growing what is already there, and Abhyasa helps us to empty out what is already there.
Thank you.
So Kashiji, what are the different ways of going about Vairagya?
Well, Vairagya simply means being centered. There are so many things that push us off balance. Like maybe I wanted to say something, but someone beat me to it. And that starts a little bit of agitation. Maybe I expected to hear something and I heard something else. That started a bit of agitation. Maybe I wanted someone to behave in a certain way and they didn't behave in that certain way. It starts off a process. So in that sense, allowing ourselves to be more centered is Vairagya. Unfortunately, people think Vairagya is rejection of the world, It's actually the ability to really engage much better with the world. Nehal, I can see you're saying something.
Yeah. So actually, when you somebody asked a question and you were saying that he was one step away. Now the most practical and the difficult choice in life is, I just messaged you that when is a good time to let go. You might just be a step away, but sometimes you might be far away, but either somebody pushes you or you just feel ho jayega and you keep going, but wo to hota hi nahi hai. So that's a fine line, and maybe some perspective on that.
Absolutely. That is where the guru comes into the picture. When we have a guru, when we have someone that we can look up to, that gives us an innate sense of confidence that if I can't figure out, then there's someone to help me figure it out. And that helps, that confidence helps us to figure things out much more better. Like the Yogasara Upanishad talked of the Ritambhara Pragya. There is a sense of rightness within us, that what we call conscience or the soul or the inner voice, whatever. And the more we keep meditating, the more we keep polishing this inner faculties, the more they become more obvious. A lot of times our own impressions can come up as what we think is the inner voice, and that's where the confusion starts. Gurudev gives the story of, there was this one lady who was very afraid of hospitals, and one day her husband was unwell, and she said, well, my inner voice is telling me don't go to the hospital. And then after some time it became very serious. So a lot of times what we think as the inner voice can also just be our own impressions coming forth. That is where some amount of intuition, of course, all of us have. At the same time, using the intellect makes a lot of sense. So finding this balance is not something that we cannot have a generic solution to a specific problem. At different points of life, we definitely will take different decisions. But what we can do is polish these tools that can help us arrive at decisions. And that's what meditation does. That's what sadhana does. That's what seva does. All of these things help us to polish these faculties within us. Yeah, Nehal?
Thank you.
Jai Gurudev,
Nikita?
Kashi Bhaiya.
Yeah, Mama has a question.
Jai Gurudev,
Yeah, Mama.
Kashi Bhaiya.
Jai Gurudev, Sunita ji.
I wanted to ask you, like the last line says that when you are able to transcend the three gunas, then Kaivalya happens.
Mhm.
But it's so, and then, but we do get caught up in the gunas all the time, So I think only Guruji has transcended all the three. Yes, at least for me, I haven't. So, how does one achieve that?
When the cup is half full, it's also half empty. But when you see the cup as half empty, you're also seeing it as half full. Put your attention on the fullness. All of us have experienced Kaivalya Mashnute. Maybe it has not stayed permanently, but we have all had this experience of fullness, of oneness, some time or the other, somewhere in the meditation, doing Sudarshan Kriya, meditating, somewhere it has felt, oh, it's all one. And then it died away. That's a different matter. But none of us have ever been left out of this experience of oneness. So just putting your attention on that and having the faith that that's going to grow. So the whole question is tatra sthitau yatnau abhyasa. All that effort to be established there. To get there is very easy, but to not get away from that state, that is what the whole yahi to sara majra hai. So
I think
So
the
there is
lockdown
hope.
has done wonders in that sense because, the meditation and the sadhana has been very consistent. And that is one of the boons, I think, of lockdown.
Absolutely.
Kashi ji, I just want to say that mostly, not all the time, but mostly I'm quite very involved and immersed in creating, and very happy and content, and feel this oneness,
Mhm.
not just with my work, but with you all, with other people, with, and only sometimes something rubs me the wrong way, but just for a little while. But mostly I feel this oneness very deeply.
That's
Because
our birthright for sure.
I mean, I think in the beginning, when I was in college and all, it wasn't there. I was always looking and searching and wondering, and but now I'm quite calm, and I feel there's a big difference, a big change
Mhm.
from
That's
inside,
perfect, of course.
and you have a big part to play in that. You've really played a big part in that. I mean, because anytime I get some thought, I want to ask you, do you think this is, what do you think about it, and get your feedback on it. And
Thank you
how
so
are we
much.
wishing Gurudev for his birthday?
I think by smiling more and spreading more smiles.
Uh,
Yeah.
or meditating with him?
Yeah, definitely. There'll be some programs will definitely be announced. Of course, I'm doing what I feel is my best contribution. I'm teaching more, because whatever I get from my guru, the more I can share it. That's where I see my fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
your analogies are the best, Kashi Bhaiya.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you,
I think
Manish.
you're
I
a
agree.
wonderful teacher.
He is your guru and you are our guru.
Oh, Raji.
Hi, hi.
There.
I have one observation and one
Yeah, Raji.
question.
Sure.
That I think in this entire scripture, I know everything is a gem, but the fact that how you can harness the power of consciousness to change the world, to me, that's so inspiring as a goal to have. I know it's difficult because after a great meditation, you feel like you can do anything. That there is nothing
Yeah.
that stops you. All you have to do is get into the external world for the buttons to get pressed for you to go. So how do you establish is a big thing, but the fact that that is possible, that possibility is so inspiring. I think that was,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely right.
The question I had was, I didn't ask it yesterday, is that you said the whole nature is a play of gunas.
Mhm.
So what does that mean? Play of gunas, meaning it doesn't stay the same, it keeps changing, or they all make a whole? What does that mean?
So the whole idea is that unless there are qualities, then everything will there is a sense of oneness where there is inertia, where there is no change. But it's the change that really brings forth the whole universe. And in that sense, the whole universe is a play of the gunas because of these qualities changing, sattva, rajas, tamas, all dynamically interacting. That is what gives rise to this existence. Otherwise, it would be just one homogeneous, amorphous kind of thing. And so, when so that's why Prakriti is called Trigunavalambini. It is Alamban. It is held together by the Trigunas, and that's why it's divine. So we don't have to reject the world. And I think this is one of the most brilliant aspects of the Vedic tradition, that it was never a sense of rejecting anything, plus and minus, good and bad. The way that the Vedic tradition managed to take everything along and really transcend, this is something so brilliant.
Yeah, I just want to. So, Kashima, what's the best way to hold on? You reach there and then again you go back. Then what is the best way to hold on to stay there?
Yeah. So just knowing that you have no choice, whatever is, we are all connected, come what may. I think relaxing is the best way to stay on. Often, when we get feverish about staying on, then something is lost. So just relax and take it for a fact.
Thank you. just one day before yesterday, it was so beautiful after the session. Like, experience just comes behind your words, and there was so much joy within that. It was like it was. I mean, I could really experience it, and so that was amazing. So thank you for that. And also thank you so much, because I was really so disturbed after seeing those eggs in the kitchen that I really had thought that this is the end of the so much. So like I did wonder that how do you handle something like that? But thank you for that also. But like really, how do you handle something like that? Ooh, I don't know if it's pertaining to this class, but
Great, Radhika.
काशी भैया, जब हम समाधि में glimpses of समाधि आती है, और उस समय एक शून्य पद, you feel the emptiness and you feel the radiance of the space, and yes, when you do come out, you feel very light. But to take that deeper and make it longer, as you said, our sadhana supports it. But in that emptiness, does something also sprout further? Does it go deeper? That it is such a big void at that time.
So when we think void means nothing, then actually void also means everything. When something is totally nothing, it also encompasses everything. So the whole idea of shunya or ultimate or whatever we call it is about how do I say, when we see that there is nothing, then the division vanishes, and then nothing and everything becomes synonymous. It's only when I say, okay, this much, then I have this and that. But when that barrier dissolves, then it's all one.
Connected. It's all
connected. So
merges.
Often we find a little fear coming up from dissolving because we are so comfortable with an identity. From childhood, we have been trained or conditioned to hold on to our identity, to our existence. And that's why initially sometimes meditation can feel quite fearful. And that's where having a guru, someone, that someone is taking care of you, someone is leading you on the path, makes it easier to walk on the spiritual path. You know that you have something to fall back on. And that's why the Yogasara Upanishad also says, Gurur Antikam Abhyasi. You do all of this, but do it with the guru, and that will take care of, that will help you to move without fear. Dhuru, you're saying something?
So Kashiji, we have to really live in the moment, in the now moment, and really deeply be involved completely in that presence. Because then your mind can't go to the past, it can't go to the future, because you're involved with the now moment, and nothing, there are no worries, nothing disturbs you. And I find that when the waters get turbulent, or I mean that metaphorically, then I just listen to my own breathing and I get recentered, and that's living in the moment. And I feel quite happy with that.
Perfect. So everyone is unique. We all have our own tools and
our own ways of
and so it's always good to see what works for ourselves.
What works for you?
Everything works for me.
Kashi, I just have a small question. It's about the samadhi. You mentioned that walking in the rain is also samadhi. And I know people who play golf, they say we don't need to do any meditation. Just looking at the green is samadhi. So like, that means even if they don't do meditation, it's fine. Or people who are deeply into music.
That can become their meditation, but that is still something. I mean, there is no equivalent to meditation, so to speak. For someone to be in a very meditative state, you have to be really exceptional to be able to make that happen. But for most of us, it's always good to have some tools to make it happen.
Okay.
Like there might be some people who can blow air in their car tire with their mouth. Of course, it's possible. There are some superhumans, but for most of us, having a hand pump makes it much more easier. Why would you even want to do something like that when you have a hand pump at hand?
You can talk to the golfers and they'll all say that we do our meditation looking at them.
Talking about my dad.
You know,
Okay.
maybe these are activities like golf and painting, filmmaking, cooking. All these are activities, and they can be meditative. But when you're truly in dhyan, that is stillness.
Mhm.
There's no activity there. That's why there's a difference.
Yeah,
You
all
know?
of them are different flavors. It's like saying that, of course, I can have rice all my life and not have any vegetables or anything else. They'll say, well, I'd like to have my food. I like to garnish my food with so many different things. You can see I love food. And all the food examples somehow seem to strike home perfectly. So just like just having rice will still sustain you, keep you alive, yet having mm, uh, all the different kinds of food are perfectly okay. In the same way, I think, yes, it's definitely possible to just maybe listen to music and transcend, and that could be your only sadhana. But for most of us, having the formal method definitely makes a difference.
Because there's true stillness, the stillness quality comes in. You're so still. The stillness is what is the silence, and the stillness you can only get when you sit in deep meditation. You know, there is a difference. You know, because I've
Raji,
done
you're
both.
saying?
I've done both, and I feel it's the differences in the stillness and the solitude and the quiet. You know.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I guess that's it for tonight. We're already on for quite some time.
Kashi Bhaiya,
Guruji
Kashi
wants
Bhaiya,
something.
Yeah, Duru. Duru, please go ahead. You can say what you're trying to say.
Can't hear you, Guruji.
I guess, well, so I guess that's it for tonight, and we'll keep meeting. And let's see, I wonder when the next, what the next session is and what we're going to take up. I always like to not think about it, and then I'm sure Shweta comes up with something right at the which is very interesting. We're planning something for next month, I think. So next month we'll also do another week of knowledge like this. It's always good to give a little gap, then it makes it more worthwhile. So see you again sometime, somewhere, somewhere. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev Bhaiya.